In today's video, we're doing wheel bearings in a 1966 Ford F250 two-wheel drive. These are the rear drums, and we're putting in new bearing races, new bearings, and new seals. We're going to start with the inner, and then we'll flip this over and we'll take care of the outer. As far as parts that you need, the rear inner race, these are O'Reilly part numbers. 18720 is the inner bearing race, so that'll go in there. And then the inner bearing is 18790. That's the bearing. It'll go inside of the race, inside of there. And then the last one is the seal, and that is part number, if I can read it upside down, 472856. So those are the O'Reilly part numbers. You could probably source these, cross-referencing part numbers, whatever. Again, it's a 66 F250 two-wheel drive. That's what we're working on today, but let's get these installed. As far as tools go, for the inners, I'm going to use the old race that came out to drive that down in there. I also have kind of a metal punch, real wide, easy to hit with the hammer, won't mar the sides of it, that sort of thing. And then I'm just using a 3-pound sledge. So that's the tools that I'm using for this. I'm also using high temperature bearing grease and hand packing my bearings. I don't have one of those fancy tools, and I hardly ever do this, so I just put some in my palm of my hand and pack the bearings by hand. Do that with the race because that makes it easier. Then I'll drive the race in, put the bearings in, put the seal in. Then we'll flip this over and we'll talk about the front side. It's messy, but effective. What you do is you just pack it underneath until you start to see it ooze out between the bearings themselves. Then you know that all the air's been pushed out of those, and then you take your glob that's left over and move it to kind of the next section. Pack it in until it starts to come out through the bearing races. So, not the funnest job in the world, but nothing with a little blue shop towel and hand degreaser can't solve when the job is done. You can also hold this up and still see daylight through it. That's when you know you got to keep going. If you can see light through it, you know you haven't packed the bearings all the way. It's okay to have extra on it. It's not going to hurt anybody's feelings. Some people like to pack extra down inside the wheel shaft too, so that if they're ever out on the road and need to do a repair, they have extra grease. You don't need a lot, but some. It's handy to have around. Alright, that made a substantial mess, but it was effective. So now I got to get the bearing out of there and set it aside. I'm just going to put it on the lid to the grease. Make sure that I use the skinny side up so that the bearing will drop down inside. Set that in place. Now's a good time to clean my hands. Grease makes good hand cleaner anyway. Hands are cleaner now than they were when I started. Alright, let's just wipe the top of that so it's not so slick. Alright, and then we take our other one. Just give it a couple taps side to side until it starts to drop all the way in where it's supposed to go. And you'll feel it bottom out when it does. It'll change the sound that it makes. when you hit it. Don't get your fingers, that hurts. I already did that once today. Alright, I don't want to hit it any harder, any further down, because I don't want to damage the rim of the drum. So we'll switch to the punch. Woo! About got myself. Yikes. Thing's getting slick. Let's go ahead and wipe that off. Woo! That was close twice in a row. That's when I stop and say, okay, safety issue. There we go. Well, it's not slick, it just slipped out of my hands. Alright, I've got about 1/8 of an inch to go. Oh, see, you heard that? That's it bottomed out. Sounds different, rings like a bell, that's how you know. And that race you used to drive it in should just release and come out. If not, I may have to flip this upside down and tap it out. In fact, I think I will, because it is too tight to get out. No big deal. So not everything goes to plan. What I'm using is a little Dremel tool with a diamond bit tip to make myself a little groove so that I can get a screwdriver or a chisel or something to catch from the back side and I can hit it out. So I'm putting a mark on this side and a mark on that side so that I can go kind of walk it out with the chisel. Not ideal, but there's always a way. There and there. Ugh. Freak. Yep, that hurts.
1 hour later.
So I did finally get that out of there. That took some doing, but I had to back out the new race enough to where this fell out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the outer race instead as my drive for this, because it's loose enough that it just fits down in there. So whack that down in there. It's also wider profile, so I shouldn't have to hit it, you know, clear down in to no man's land where I can't get it out anyway. So that's where I'm at. Let's finish this up. A little bit farther. I gotta get this light out of the way. It's not helping me. And I don't think it's helping you guys see any better either. If anything, it's putting a glare. There we go. I just heard it bottom out. Yep. Double check with the light. Yep. Alright, and because I used that Dremel tool and kind of dug into this thing, I'm shedding a light in there, it's not going to help you see anyway, but put micro metal shavings down in here, so I'm going to clean that out before I go any farther. Let's just make sure we get out any contaminants. Alright. Make sure I didn't do any damage to this race at all. It looks really good. And it's seated all the way down in there. So now we're going to put a little bit of grease in there, put the bearing in, and then we'll drive our seal in. So we're back to where we were before disaster struck. Sheesh, what a mess. Just gonna pack some extra in here because I'd rather have too much than end up with a dry bearing. And it's okay if some gets down inside of there. It's a wet axle anyway, a floating axle. A little extra grease is not gonna hurt anyone or anything. All right, we're back where we left off. Let's drop our bearing down in there. And then our seal. The rubber portion that has a little spring on it, if you look pretty close on those things, there's a little spring that helps hold the rubber tight to the shaft. That is the side that goes to the inside. So it will go like this. The part numbers will show to the outside. That's how you know you've got it right. And these things can be a little tricky to get started. See if they just rock back and forth. I am not exactly sure what the trick is for this. Let's lube the outside with a little grease. See if that helps. It'll either help or it'll make it worse. One or the other. Okay, I think adding a little axle grease to that actually helped get it started. And I'm just slowly walking it down in, side to side. Trying to stay even, both sides. That was harder than it needed to be. User error. I should have used that other bearing race, the wider one instead of the narrower one. It's just slightly diameter different, so it doesn't get wedged down inside there. But let's clean up this side, get this bearing and bearing race seated down in here as well. And now for the outer bearings. And for this one, the part number for the race is 25520. Again, O'Reilly is where I got my parts. And those numbers are actually stamped on the parts as well, laser engraved, 25520. You want to put the thickest edge down so that the bearing will actually drop in place from the outside. You want to be able to get that bearing out if you ever need to without taking the whole thing apart. So it's going to go in like that with the beveled edge this direction. The rear outer bearing is 2984. That's the part number. 2984. National Bearings is the brand that I'm using for this job. Nice. New bearings are so nice. Love it. We got to get that all greased up too, so gonna get my hands dirty again. It's fine. It is what it is. Just stop complaining. Alright. Yep. I think that's gonna work. So again, we're gonna set the bearing itself aside. Set that right there. Thickest portion goes down again. Remember that. You gotta be able to get that bearing to drop in there. Let's see if we can do this one in a single shot without making any faux pas, mistakes. Opportunities to learn. That's what they really are. It drops down that first portion easily. After that's when it starts getting tricky, and I'm going to make sure I can still get that out of there. Okay, cool. And I put the beveled edge down so I can get a chisel or a screwdriver or something on the back side to drive it out if I need to as well. So be smart. How much farther farther's that gotta go? Ooh, that's gotta go a long ways. Woo-wee! All right. We are just getting warmed up here, folks. Woo, that's got a long ways to go still. Yeah, hurts me. Hurts not. I think we're there, actually. I didn't hear the sound change, maybe. Just didn't notice. Oh yeah, definitely. We're bottomed out. Yep, we're there. That pivots, so it should come out of there. Let go. This thing spins around, but it's not just dropping out of there. Well, okay, so let's flip this thing over. And we'll tap it out from the back side again. There it goes, just like that. When you use those things the right way, they drop out of there easy. And just like that, this one's done as well. I've already done the other one. And I swear I did the same thing with that other bearing race, but it got stuck for some reason. Bearing drops down in there like so, and then we just be careful with it, because if you tip it, that will fall out, so we don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to set this aside. I've got my brakes done already. Those are ready to be reinstalled on the truck as well. Thanks for watching, guys. This is Troy with DIY Home and Auto. I appreciate it. I hope I earned a thumbs up from you. If I did, please like, share, subscribe, comment, do all those things. I really appreciate that. It helps me out immensely. Did I make some mistakes? Absolutely. Did I show them? I absolutely did. I also showed you how I got out of the bind as well. So, took some doing, mashed my finger a couple times, but it's kind of the nature of the beast. These things aren't that terribly difficult to do. Having proper tools does help immensely. I'll leave links down below. Check the description for part numbers and those type of things, the types of tools that I used for this job as well. Again, this is a 66 F250 two-wheel drive. We've nicknamed him Wallace the 66. I'm doing a budget build on this. I've given myself $2,500. I'll put right up here a synopsis of where we stand at this point. We've got the rear brakes done. I've got it running. Anyway, check the playlist. I'll leave a link up here as well. It's kind of a fun little project. We're trying to get this thing back on the road. It was last registered in 1988, so it expired in 89. I got the truck from a friend of mine, so I know the history on it. But I appreciate you following along. I've got some other projects in the works as well, so be sure and subscribe, ring that bell so you're notified of new projects. Check some of my playlists. I've got some really cool projects that I'm working on. I already said that. You already knew that. Anyway, again, I always say again, this is Troy with DIY Home and Auto. We'll see you guys in the next video.